Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Gene Marks. I write, every week for The Guardian, for The Hill, for the Washington Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. And I also run a 10-person technology consulting firm outside of Philadelphia. And if you haven't figured out just by looking at me, I'm also a CPA. So I just didn't want to give that one away. And I'm here with a great guest, very special guest. I've been looking forward to speaking to Joe Walsh. Joe is the CEO of Thryv. Joe, thanks for joining me for this conversation.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Sure. So first of all, doing a little stalking on you before this conversation. So you spent 24 years at Yellow Book. Is that correct? Did I read that right?
Yeah.
I take this as a compliment. You don't look that old, to be honest. I was like shocked to see that. What was your experience before joining Thryv?
Well, I was an entrepreneur from the beginning. I tried to bootstrap start a couple of businesses. One was a Yellow Pages company competing with the telephone company Yellow Pages, and I undercapitalized, bootstrapped this thing, built it up, and managed to have enough success to sell it to a larger company. I spent a couple of years helping grow that larger company I sold it to, and then I was headhunted to come to New York and join this little mom and pop company called Yellow Book that were looking to build a new, younger generation of management. And I didn't begin as the CEO. I started in a sales and marketing type role, but was tapped to be the CEO not too long afterwards, and took that. It was 20 million in revenue roughly when I joined. We went to more than 2 billion in the US and 4 billion globally over those next 20 something years. We did it with a combination of organic expansion, launching into new markets, expanding geographically and growing our existing markets. And then also through acquisitions, we made 77 acquisitions over a period of about 15 years. So we sort of rolled up that space. So that was my background there. And then after leaving Yellow Book, I started a board advisory practice called Walsh Partners. And we were working with hedge funds and private equity groups that had portfolio companies that they needed help with. And that led me to Cambium Learning Group, which was a education publisher. And I was executive chairman there for a little over 6 years. And we pivoted the focus of the company from publishing books and textbook materials to publishing essentially learning games and learning simulations and so on online. And we expanded it to 43 countries around the world. And it really became a very strong ed tech company, to the point where Veritas, one of the big private equity groups, bought the entire company for $14.50 a share. It was about 70 cents when I got there. So it was a pretty good run, pretty good return. And I got a master class really in recurring revenue and software during that. And so when the owners of the Super Pages, Dex Media, Yellow Pages people who had been my arch rival competitors for years, when they contacted our board advisory practice and said, would you guys come in and help us develop a strategy? I very much had software on the brain. So maybe I was a hammer looking for a nail, but came in and, really recommended to them that there was a new approach that they could use rather than helping their small business customers, get customers through the Yellow Pages. They could really pivot to a new problem, and that's help them harness their phones to run their businesses, basically, using cloud software.
So that brings us to Thryv. In the years that I've been selling software and applications, and as my clients have moved to the cloud, and we have about 600 of them that are small and medium-sized businesses. Though the biggest complaint that I have heard, and I still hear it, by the way, is why can't I just find one platform that does it all? Why do I have to buy a CRM application, accounting application, a marketing add-on, an HR, whatever. And it's been because the cloud has evolved the way it is. I'm seeing more and more large tech companies are now starting to focus on that. There's operational ones from NetSuite, obviously Microsoft, G Suite, and some other up and comers. Zoho is another one where they're providing business applications among, to try and be on all. I get from Thryv that this is a similar, you're looking for an end-to-end client experience is what your company is trying to do. And I think you're jumping on that wave of trying to provide that, that all-in-one platform eventually. Is that where you see the company going? Like for a small business like mine, is one day Thryv going to be the platform that I can go and really just rely on it for end-to-end, complete through even accounting someday?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Tell me
directionally,
why.
that's right, but there's so much to be done. So the way we've solved that problem, Gene, is we have an app store, a marketplace
Right.
with integrations with other tools that fit in and work seamlessly with Thryv. So Thryv is your that's the place you go, right? It's your console or the dashboard or it's the place that you live. And Thryv does a lot. It does a whole lot. There's about 20 things, but it's going to be not really possible to get something to do everything, because what you'll end up with is a kind of a crappy compromise in certain areas. And
Right.
so, the most popular here in the US, the most popular accounting software is Quickbooks. We integrate with Quickbooks. There's also FreshBooks and a bunch of others, MyOb, Zero, many, many, many of them. We have integrations with many of them, and we're adding them all the time. What we want to do is if you're using that tool and you like it and it works for you, we want it to be able the data to share and for it to work seamlessly with Thryv. So it's really, for us, it's all about the small business kind of end user experience, trying to make it remove barriers, make it as easy as possible. And part of making it easy is having a pretty big tool that does a lot. And so, yeah, Thryv does a lot. It handles all of your front end, your listings management, your marketing. The higher versions of Thryv come with a very fast, well SEO'd website that pops up well in searches and results. We put the forms up there by which people can fill out a form and contact you. We enable text and email marketing, all of that stuff on the front end. And then once you have a customer, everything from estimates, invoices, billing, payments, managing the jobs, exchanging documents, all of that stuff. And then after you complete the job, getting credit for that, soliciting a rating and review and then posting that review on your behalf, and then nurturing additional business out of that existing customer. All of that stuff, that client experience is all within Thryv. But to be honest, we don't track your wing nuts and your filters that you used, in the back office. That's a pretty detailed area. And typically within industries, within verticals, there will often be a tool that we can just integrate with, rather than us trying to figure out the sprockets business or some very specific business.
So where do you focus? Like, who is the ideal? Is a company like mine, an ideal customer of yours? Again, we're a service-based business. I have 10 employees. We have hundreds of clients. Or are you looking more towards more of a specific niche?
I would say, the way we think about it is roughly 2 to 50 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps if you have a lot of customers. The more the merrier, because what Thryv really does is it helps you manage that communication and keep all your employees and all your customers, you can communicate with them. So what bad looks like for us is somebody that works by themselves that has 2 customers and very minimal communication needs with those customers.
Right.
You can sort of do it all, on your phone, really, just with free tools. You don't really need a lot of, maybe every now and then you need some help making up an invoice or something, but it's not that hard. When you're dealing with many, many employees and many, many customers, the communication starts really magnifying. And, I think you mentioned you have about 600 customers.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted, and I know you have a newsletter and so on, and that's great, but if you wanted to be able to carry on a two-way dialogue, through text or through email with those customers, we've got a very powerful marketing automation tools within Thryv that would allow you to carry on a conversation without, I've gotten emails from some of your staff, so I know that they're hard at work sending them out. You could automate a lot of that stuff, and and it would be able to be done automatically.
Been at Thrive for 14 years now. Is that how long?
That's I started in 14, so
In
it's been about
2014.
7 years.
7 years.
And we basically pivoted this 136-year-old company that had been publishing phone books and doing, online marketing services type stuff, pivoted to this software. So we still have got a very big marketing services business, but all of the emphasis is on the software business we're building now internationally.
What made you, when it came time to come to this company? I mean, like you said, it was fairly old school. It was an old school, type of business that it was in. And frankly, as you know from Yellow Book, it's not, it was not necessarily a growing business. In fact, it was a dying business. But you took on this challenge, and I'm wondering why you did that back in 2014. What is the opportunity that you saw then, and how far along are you towards reaching some of the goals that you thought to yourself back then?
The way I was contacted initially was they brought us in as to do a consulting assignment, basically a board advisory assignment. Come in, and the challenge from the board was the Yellow Pages business is in a long-term secular kind of decline, and that's not going to change. We could work 7 days a week, and that wouldn't change. Still delivers a lot of value to its core customer group and its core users, but that audience is shrinking. And then, we're building websites and we're doing these other digital marketing services, but it's hyper competitive, hard to distinguish ourselves. We're looking for some help thinking about the strategy. And so, my team and I came in, did a bunch of work, and basically came back and said, look, your customers, and you have hundreds of thousands of customers nationwide, have a problem that you could solve. And the way I described it to the board at that time, I said, look, enterprises, big companies are migrating to the cloud. This is 2014, are putting their data centers in the cloud, are migrating to the cloud. And that's still going on today. It's accelerated today. Even consumers are using the cloud. They're storing their photos in the cloud. They're doing goofy videos of them, their cat and themselves, and putting them up in the cloud. The group that's not in the cloud, it's not in the party, that's being left out entirely, are the backbone of America. The small business entrepreneurs running 2 to 50 employee small companies are not in the cloud. If they're using software, it's running on a server in the other room. They're just not playing. They're not involved. And some of them don't even know what the cloud is. Again, this is 2014. We have a responsibility. We have an opportunity with hundreds of thousands of small businesses out there that are our customers to help them, to basically hold their hand and help them harness these powerful tools and essentially democratize this better customer experience that you can deliver through the cloud, right through the phones that your consumers have. And so the board thought that was a brilliant idea, and didn't feel the management team they had at the time running the company could execute that strategy. So they said, would you and your team be willing to come in and execute that strategy here? And I had just been running the ed tech software company. In fact, I was still running it at that time, and was beginning to think about starting a business like this. I decided, what better place to start it than here on this already giant company. It had some problems, don't get me wrong, but all those resources could be brought to bear to get big quickly. So flash forward to today, and we've got a more than $150 million SaaS software business sitting inside of the marketing services business now. It would have been hard to do that from scratch in 6 years without this big set of resources.
You spent a lot of time at Yellow Book, I'm sure, selling to those same small businesses. So you know how difficult it can be to sell into the small business market. It's tough for people to change. It's tough for people to embrace new technology. There's a lot of different family-owned businesses, the whole thing going on. So what were those challenges during the past 7 years? I mean, you yourself said you've got this big untapped market, the small business owners, the backbone of America that weren't embracing the cloud, didn't even know what the cloud was, You've come a long way in 7 years. I'm kind of, I'd like to know what, what were your biggest obstacles and how did you overcome them when trying to, bring these businesses to your platform?
Well, I'm going to start with what was easy.
Okay.
What was easy was we had this more than 1,000-person army of salespeople working all those accounts across the country.
Right.
And we sat and we talked with them about the needs of their customers and the fact that their customers were experiencing intense competition from global e-commerce, from national and regional companies that were using these very cloud tools to deliver a superior experience to a consumer. And so they were in that pitched battle that had always been going on between small local businesses and the big national one. The small guy always had the edge, only in this case, it had flipped. The big guy had the edge because he had the team of marketers sitting in a room knowing that your daughter's pregnant. That the big company actually knew you better than the small company for once and was available to deal with you 24 hours a day on a cool app that you could make an appointment or make a payment or whatever. Small business, you called after 6, you got an answering machine, and then they had to hopefully call you back the next day. And so you didn't get that immediate gratification that we've begun to expect. So what was easy was getting that sales force excited about our mission and what we wanted to do. What was also easy was selling those early customers. They went out and began to tell customers what we were working on. And the customer said, sign me up. I need that. I need help with that. So getting the sales force going and getting the customers signed up, easy. What was hard was getting them to actually
use it.
So, it was like selling gym memberships in January. Everybody's got their New Year's resolution. I'm going to take off 20 pounds. And they can't wait to sign up with the gym. And they go 5 times in January.
Yeah.
And then they go twice in the beginning of, February. And then it just starts to tail off,
Yeah. We sell CRM software. Lots of people, they buy into the whole thing of, I'm going to invest in CRM and increase my sales 30% next year. But getting people to use it and build a culture around it and adopt it is, especially my smaller clients, it's really, really challenging. I'm curious how you overcame that. When you come across, even today, customers of yours that are not fully, I'm going to bet that there are subscribers of Thryv that are using 20% of the capabilities of Thryv, just like, we're using 20% of what Microsoft Office does, and it, and that these companies can be not only making better use of it to help themselves, but of course that helps you longer term because the more they're taking advantage of the features, the more they're going to continue, the more apt they'll continue to pay their subscriber fees forever.
The analogy that you give is a really good one. I mean, your Microsoft Office has all kinds of stuff that I've never used. I don't know how to use. But I use a lot. And what I do use, I feel really good value on. Yeah. So Thryv does 20 things. Does 20 things. And, a lot of our power users who are really, really happy use 5 or 6. And but again, it's like me with my Microsoft Office. I'm very happy with the stuff I'm using. So
Agreed.
I don't know that the bar has to be 100% usage, but it does need to be active login, and it does need to be it's the organizing principle for their business, and that we've achieved in an extremely high percentage. There's a crawler that goes across our website every morning when you turn your computer on. It just goes all day long. It shows you daily, weekly, and monthly active usage of the software, and we've all got goals around that. And we measure our success not by the revenue coming in, but by engagement in the software. And we're growing the number of inbox conversations. We're growing the number of payments being accepted through Thryv Pay. We're growing the number of email and text marketing campaigns being run, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We measure all that stuff, and they're all growing, way into the double digits. So when you ask me, well, what do you think is going to happen to revenue next year? I got a pretty good leading indicator when I look at the volume of engagement that the revenue is going to follow it.
Talking about revenue, so last quarter, your SaaS revenue, software as a service, your cloud revenue, I'm reading my notes that I took, increased 32.3% year over year, an enormous increase. Tell me about that. Were you expecting it? What does that tell you about your customer base?
Well, look, I mean, that's what we've been working toward. Businesses don't grow, especially ones like this that are growing so fast. They don't grow in a perfect linear line. You have sometimes moments of consolidation of what you're doing, and then explosions of growth and so on. Mm-hmm. So we've been growing in this way really since we started Thryv about 6 years ago. But we have had a couple of flattish periods where we changed something, or where we were, consolidating what we had done and got ready for the next leg of growth. So we're in the early stages of another big leg of growth right now. The total addressable market for what we do is very large. It's almost 10 million businesses in the US and more than 10 around the world. And we're rapidly expanding internationally and in the US. So the opportunity is pretty big. Being a public company, I can't guide specifically what's going to happen in the future. But yes, there's a building momentum about what we're doing that comes from very low churn. I mean, our customers are not leaving us. They're finding value in the product, even though they're not using all of it yet. They're finding value in what they are using, and they're recommending their friends, and it's expanding and growing. And I dare say, probably be too strong to say it's gone viral, but it's going that way a bit. We're getting a lot of referrals and a lot of growth from existing customers bringing their friends.
When you look back to when you started in 2014 and the cloud was so nascent, especially with small businesses, I mean, I've been wrong so many times, and I was wrong about this. I was thinking really about that, like, oh, the cloud I'm going to have such a hard time bringing my clients to the cloud. Most of the software that we were selling was on-premise stuff, and I think typical small business owner like myself, we don't trust anyone. We don't want to put our data out there. Now, meanwhile, like HR and payroll apps are exploding in the cloud. Their payroll information. To me, that I wasn't expecting that, but what do I know? You must have been. I mean, this couldn't have been that much of a surprise.
I've been a big company CEO for the last bunch of years. I was running a $4 billion company I told you about before.
Yeah.
And then I was running a very big ed tech company. So we were in all those cases, in the boardrooms I was in, other boards I was sitting on, other meetings. The conversation was always about how we as an enterprise can do our computing in the cloud.
Right.
And so that's the life I was living in. And then again, I mentioned earlier, I saw consumers beginning to move into the cloud. I figured it was only a matter of time till the mega wave of small businesses going into the cloud, appreciating there was a learning issue and an engagement issue that had to be overcome that would take a little longer, because obviously corporations are much, much more sophisticated and they have very specialized people working on it.
Right.
The problem for small businesses is you have all generalists. The plumber's also got his IT hat on, his marketing hat on. They're typical because they're not as big. You have to wait until the technology is almost consumer grade before they can use it. And what we've endeavored to do with Thryv is really create a consumer grade tool. I mean, it doesn't take very long at all. You can put Thryv in front of a 10-year-old and they can pretty quickly figure out how to navigate their way around it. Maybe better test, you can put it in front of a 60-year-old and they can find their way to navigate around it. It's, there's drop-down menus. It's pretty simple. Right. And once you tell Thryv you're a plumber or whatever you are, it knows that and it begins to configure itself around who you are. So it's way easier now than it was 2 years ago, and 2 more years from now, it'll be way easier.
We're going to pivot to talking a little bit more about small businesses, but maybe this is it's somewhat of a segue, but you had mentioned earlier, and we were talking about getting people to use Thryv, and you're monitoring the usage and you're seeing how it's going up and more emails are sending, more engagement. That's all great. But having said that, though, you are still dealing with very, very small companies, and people have very limited time. And as easy to use as your software might be, some people, a lot of people just don't have the time to do it, or to dig into it, or to do what they got to do. So what do you tell your customers when you do see them lagging? What do you or your customer service reps, what advice do you give them to say, here's some thoughts or some advice to you on how you could be making more use of this. Just as an example, when people aren't using the CRM applications that we sell, I generally tell them that they probably have to spend a little money and get some help, like an admin, or somebody just part time, or maybe somebody in the office to do certain things to just at least kickstart things. Do you have the same? Do you give the same kind of advice, or is there anything different that you say to your customers?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is we have a pretty big client experience team who they're not a part of onboarding. We've got a whole onboarding process
Okay.
that but once you're past the 90-day mark and you're just out there and forever using it, we've got another team that kicks in, and they're both through sending you email kind of tips and little videos and ideas to help you. Like on your phone, sometimes you get those little videos that tell you, how to use another feature, how to do something. We do that kind of thing.
Yep.
We also call them and email them and work directly with them over Zoom or whatever, and show them and teach them and coach them. So we have that piece.
Okay.
But we also try, and what we've learned is a lot of times if the owner, the actual business owner, the decision maker, is say 55 or older, 60 or older, we'll encourage them to try to find a sponsor, somebody to inside the business to be the point person other than him or herself.
Right.
So maybe they've got a Radar O'Reilly that works with them. They could kind of have look after it for them. So you need somebody to really, be the owner of it in there. And it sounds like you're giving the same advice to your customers as well.
Yeah, the Small Business Administration came out with data recently that said that more than half of the small business owners in this country are over the age of 55. It is still a skewing older demographic. A lot of the boomers and everything will be retiring, in the coming 10 or 15 years. But you're dealing with people, like you said, that they need some help. They need that Radar O'Reilly or some type of admin that can kind of move them along. Okay,
Yep.
Let me pivot a little bit. So Joe, I'm going to be recording actually a presentation for Thryv Connect that like 20 minutes. I'm going to be sharing some thoughts on employees. By the way, I know I gave you some questions in advance. This is not a question I gave you in advance, but I know it's fine. It's not an issue because I need your help with this. I'm going to be sharing some thoughts of how to retain and how to attract some employees. So I've got some thoughts, and my thoughts really, I'm not smart enough to come up with these things on my own. I'm just basically plagiarizing from some of my better clients that are doing these things. And that's what I'm going to share. Which brings me to you, right? I mean, you've been dealing with small businesses for close to 100 years or something like that. Your entire business right now is built around serving small businesses. So you know the market really, really well. And I know you run a larger company, but I'm curious if you can share with me and our audience today, give me some of your thoughts as to first of all, what you guys are doing at Thryv to attract good talent, and what you would, what thoughts you might have to recommend to some of your customers to also attract talent in these days of very tight labor. You're on.
Yeah, well, look, you're absolutely right about the problem for sure. We're hearing from a lot of our small business customers that particularly over this summer, they were having people come in and interview that had no intention of taking the job, just wanted to take back to their unemployment officer a completed application that they had done it.
It's brutal.
So now I guess those extra subsidies around unemployment are ending right now. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that begins to change. And I think the kids getting back to school and all that. I think this is a big deal to begin working our way out of it. So I expect the number of labor participants to rise pretty strongly here following Labor Day, and get going. So I'm optimistic about that. Back to your question though, we've tried to get on the front foot with this in our company, and you may not like this answer I'm about to say, but we've budgeted paying people more. So we've raised our budgets for paying people, and are doing things about that to take care of them. But I do think that the supply issue will get better here. I think there's a bunch of people be coming back into the labor force. This summer was weird. I mean, it seemed like that Thursday in May, I want to say it was like the third Thursday in May, when the CDC said, okay, tear off your mask and go out and play. It seemed like the next 10, 11 weeks were just one big love-in, summer of love party. And then along came the fourth wave and all the worries, and it started quieting back down. And then, well, school is going to start in a few weeks, and now school has started. The unemployment subsidies ended. I think there's a lot of reasons to start to returning to normal.
Let's also agree that even before COVID, it was still the number one issue with my clients. Was finding good people. I mean, there's 10 million right now open jobs, around the country, but before COVID, it was like 8.5 or 9 million. It was still always a problem. Is there any benefits that you guys provide at Thryv from a small business perspective that you are sort of most proud of, or something you would say, if I was running my own little company, this would definitely be something that I would want to offer my employees, because it's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, look, we have a budget on the head of every employee in our company for continuous development.
Right.
So, if we have 3,000 people, there's 3,000 little budgets out there. Each one of them has a development budget, and we're investing that in, conferences, seminars, programs, to things to help them sharpen their blade. So they're actually more valuable next year than they were this year, as they're getting smarter and they're learning, not just by on-the-job training or by time going by, but also actually, sharpening their skills. And we actually spend the time to think about what could help advance their career. Some people, have designs on what they want to go do in the future and how they want to try to ascend in their career. And sometimes they're missing a set of skills they need to get there. And so we go out of our way to try to help them with that. I think that's a really important thing to do. My own philosophy is, you try to create alignment. If you can help enough other people get what they want, you can get what you want. If you really try to understand the people that work for you and what they want and what unearth their ambitions, maybe even spark them up a little bit, you can help them achieve that within your business. To me, that's just good people. That's just doing the right thing as a boss, as a leader. And I think it's easy to do, and it's not. I would almost say it doesn't cost you anything. I mean, obviously there's an investment, but the return is so immediate in higher retention, higher customer satisfaction. They're nicer to your customers. I mean, everything works better when you do it that way.
My dad always used to say to me as well that, the best thing that he could give myself and my sister was just an education, because you can take that education. It's so intangible, but you can turn that into a living. And, you guys invest in education for your employees so that they can expand themselves, both professionally and personally, if that's what they're allowed to do. It turns people into better people, and they're just better assets for your company. I mean, it's a good thing to do, but it's also it benefits your organization,
So that would be, if I were to, you asked, I think you started this by saying, what's the one thing that you guys do or that you might offer as a thought, and be open about it. Say to your people, look, we're starting immediately or for beginning in 22, whatever, we're going to become a real development company. Think of you're now living in this greenhouse, and we're all going to try to get better together. It's a lot of our department leaders will have a book they'll read like every other month together. They'll read it and they'll discuss it, what kind of lessons they learn from it. And because if you're not doing something like that, if you're just coasting, you're automatically going downhill. You can't coast up a hill. If you're coasting, you're going downhill. And I think, part of being a professional in this labor force, it's rapidly changing. It's competitive. There's a lot going on. You've got to be working at it, at knowing more. So I think the company can foster a climate where you do that. And as for the individual employees, I always tell them, you need to be the president of your own development. You need to be looking after you being a better you 6 months or 12 months from now than you are today, because in business, your rewards in life will match your service. That's just how it works. If you don't have service to give, your rewards are not going to be that great.
So what do you do to develop yourself?
Oh, well, for me, it's a never-ending process. I'm always reading a couple books simultaneously. I use the Audible app on my phone and in my car. I've got a couple of podcasts that I'm listening to pretty frequently. I try to spend a few minutes every day with people who are smarter than me, more informed about a specific topic that I'm trying to catch up on. And I find I'm no absolute dope. If you give me enough good ideas, I eventually will catch a few of them. So I spend time around really smart people. They say whenever two minds come together, thereby a third is created. And you can create Napoleon Hill's mastermind principle by yourself today with podcasts and books. And I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours with some of the greatest thinkers, the greatest achievers, in history. Great politicians, great humanitarians, army generals, sports, famous people who achieved greatly and really made a study really of achievement. And success leaves clues. There's all these kind of patterns that you start to see. And so when you're presented with choices and decisions to make in your own life, you find yourself thinking about, well, what would old so-and-so do? And you sort of apply that template.
It's funny. I listen to podcasts myself, and I get the same amount of education from that. But I listen to some old stuff. Like I'll listen to like old press conferences with John F. Kennedy, or some interview that Roosevelt had. Only because it puts things into perspective. They talk about all the issues going on in that day, and you're like, wow, it's like the same issues going on today, just got a different name to it. There's a great podcast that it was like 180 episodes called The History of Rome. And it was by a classics professor. It was very well done, and each one was about 20 to 30 minutes long. And it started all the way from the founding Romulus and Remus, all the way to somewhere in like the 400s AD. And it just not only did it take you away or take me away from what was going on in life, but also again, it gives you perspective about all the problems, all the things people were dealing with. You think that things were rough during the pandemic. You have no idea when you compare it to the plague.
Well, Gene, human nature in all the thousands of years hasn't changed at all. It's the same basic transactions going on over and over again. Love, pursuit of money, all the different things, and it just keeps. And so whether it's Shakespeare or whether you study the great courses, which I've enjoyed those a lot, where you delve into different societies very, very deeply. It's really pretty much the same stuff, just happening over and over. The technology is different, the way it all happens, and it's sped up, by the way. It all happens faster now. So the patterns sometimes are a little harder to spot because they're happening so fast.
Yep.
Where before some of these things played out maybe over a period of a few years, now they play out over a period of a few weeks or a few days, sometimes because of the speed of communication. But nonetheless, human nature is the same.
Well, I mean, Joe, if human nature hasn't changed, then why can't every country just agree on a mask rule? Why can't every state agree on a mask rule?
Because human nature hasn't changed.
Because human nature hasn't changed. A very good way to put it. All right, we only have a couple of minutes left. And let me get back to one final question, Joe, and this is professionally. What keeps you up at night looking forward from a professional standpoint? What worries you about Thryv, about the economy, about your customers that you are thinking about?
Well, there are so many businesses that could really benefit from what we offer that don't know about it. And, getting the word out to them is a challenge, obviously. And, while we're, pretty successful company with good resources, we don't have unlimited resources. And so, yeah, I mean, we're about to flight our national TV ad here coming up. We're going to, blast it here before the holidays. Pretty good. That'll help get the word out. But like we've launched Thryv Pay. Mm-hmm. We launched it initially within our software. Now we've launched a free version of Thryv Pay where you can go right to the App Store and you can just download Thryv Pay, and it reduces your cost for processing payments immediately. Well, my hope is that thing just goes viral and helps bring a bunch of people into our Thryv orbit, into knowing about Thryv, and then they might from Thryv Pay upgrade to incorporate some of the software into how they run their business. But that keeps me up at night. Like, how do we get the word out? We bought this, very big business in Australia, which allow us to be the category leader very quickly in Australia. But how do I do that in Canada? How do I do that in the UK? How do I do that in Spain? Isn't always something that I can buy there that'll do it. Can we really wait 6-7 years? I mean, there's this big land grab going on. So that keeps me awake. How do we get to everybody more quickly? And I haven't completely solved it, to be honest with you.
It's fascinating to me as well that you're a company that provides marketing services and a marketing platform to small businesses that have the exact same issues that you do, and using your tools to solve their issues. And, even you haven't figured it all out. You're trying to, we all share in that same thing. And, so, you've mentioned that you're advertising, you're mentioning that you're obviously you're getting the word out, even stuff like this, your conference, social, whatever. There's no silver bullet, is there, for solving this problem?
No. And while you mentioned the conference, I wanted to stop and thank you for your role in it this year and in the past. You're a high credibility speaker that a lot of people identify with. You got good ratings. I mean, that's why we're bringing you back. Our Connect conference is a pretty big deal, and we're growing it every year. And obviously, it's been a little bit kneecapped here with the pandemic the last couple of years, and its growth is slower until we get to the other side. But we're doing it, and we're building. And I think your voice there is important.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thanks for your time. Joe Walsh is the CEO of Thryv, Inc. Joe, thanks very much. Again, your time spent is really valuable. And it's not only interesting to hear what you're doing with Thryv and what Thryv is all about, but also some of your personal insights I know are really helpful. Just, the only thing I can say to you, Joe, is don't forget that, you're, as a CEO of a large company, small business owners like myself actually want to hear what you're going through, the problems that you've shared with us today, and how you're managing your business, because we glean off of that and use that for our own. So I learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed the time with you, Gene.
Everyone, my name is Gene Marks. Thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you at Thryv Connect in just a short amount of time. Thank you very much and take care.